My reply was simple and, as I thought, mature. I completely understand. Then I called the venue, replaced my name on the contract with her ex's name, and sent them both the final invoice. When I texted her a photo of my passport at the airport with the caption, "Have a wonderful wedding. You two can pay for it," my attitude toward the whole situation became clear. My fiancée Jade pulled me aside last week, her face the kind of fraught seriousness that suggests she was about to announce something extraordinary like a national emergency, or that the last of the good coffee had run out. "My ex Damien is coming to our wedding as my +1, she said, lending the words an importance as if she were conferring the highest honor. She took a slow sip of wine and added, "You need to be mature about this." I looked at her, then at the absurdly expensive wedding binder on the coffee table, the one full of fabric swatches and photos of doves. A normal man might have argued. A less steadfast man might have begged. A more dramatic man might have flipped the table. I, for reasons I had anticipated for months, simply nodded with a thoughtful, supportive expression. "I completely understand," I said in a steady, mature tone that made her beam with pride. To her, this was the final exam. I had evolved, I was no longer possessive, and I was ready for a modern partnership. What she didn't understand, or perhaps didn't want to, was that I really did understand. I understood that our engagement was over, and I understood that Jade and Damien were about to form a very modern partnership, one that would turn out to be incredibly expensive. For her, the +1 wasn't just a guest. He automatically became the central figure. Jade lives in her own special realm of reality where the past and consequences feel like minor annoyances. Damien wasn't just an ex by her account, he was a foundational part of her journey. From my observations, Damien's profession was living his journey: freelance poetry, evening yoga classes, and a constant financial drain on those around him. He and Jade had dated for about 3 years, dramatic breakups and reconciliations that, in her telling, forged an unbreakable spiritual bond, useful precisely when someone needed rent money. During the first year of our relationship, Jade was ideal, caring, loving, and seemingly sharing my traditional values. Damien appeared only as a ghost from her past, a funny anecdote about wilder times. She didn't ask me for money, praised my work ethic, and genuinely appreciated the stability I provided. I didn't feel like some pushover funding a freeloader. I thought we had a healthy, loving relationship. There were no red flags at all. But once the ring was on her finger and the wedding deposit started clearing, something flipped. Suddenly, our relationship needed to evolve. Damien began to reappear more often. First texts, then innocent coffee meetings. When I raised an eyebrow, Jade accused me of toxic jealousy. She wasn't cheating, she insisted. She was honoring her past while building a future. It was bold, if eccentric. About 2 months ago, the first major incident happened. I came home from work to find Damien in our living room, strumming a ukulele and teaching Jade to express her inner truth through song. My inner voice urged me to toss that instrument out the window. The man was sitting cross-legged on my couch, barefoot and serenely content, the kind of posture that makes you want to check your wallet. When I voiced my discomfort, Jade arranged an official sit-down where she and Damien explained to me, as if I were a child, that my possessive energy was stifling her creative freedom. Damien even said, "Your paradigm of ownership is problematic." I nearly laughed, but instead I nodded and promised to be more open. My openness manifested as ordering a few discrete high-resolution cameras for the shared areas of the apartment the next day. A little while later, I noticed a $500 charge on our joint account, the one used for household expenses to an art supply store. I don't paint. The most creative thing I do is pick Instagram filters. When I asked, Jade waved it off. That was for Damien. He's starting a new series about the fleeting nature of urban life. He's having cash flow issues. So my paycheck began funding someone else's temporary artistic existence. I didn't make a scene. I took a screenshot of the charge, paid the bill, and quietly removed her as an authorized user on the account, telling her the bank must have sent a new card that got lost in the mail. I said I'd sort it out, and then intentionally didn't. Her demand that her ex be my +1 at our wedding was the final flourish of her campaign. It was so absurd it became a gift. She wasn't giving me a reason to stay. She was handing me a golden ticket for a spectacular exit. The camera footage showing Damien at our place more often than I'd known was useful, but still circumstantial. Her demand, however, was the opening I needed for something decisive. The next morning, after she'd gone to a bachelorette party to tell everyone how wonderfully mature I was, I set my plan in motion. My first stop was not the venue, but my lawyer. I sat down with Arthur, a hard-nosed, practical attorney, with the face of someone who'd seen it all. I explained the situation. The wedding contracts were in my name, the apartment was mine, and I was apparently about to be replaced by a ukulele-playing man. Arthur listened and smiled faintly. He reviewed the venue contract and confirmed my suspicions. Liability was clearly spelled out. But he proposed a clever move, a formal document transferring financial responsibility that would look like a routine venue form most people don't read. A simple letter won't be enough, he said. You need them to legally accept the obligations. That afternoon I called Cynthia, the event coordinator at the winery, and spun a whole speech about my noble gesture, how I was conceding the groom role for the sake of love. Cynthia was, as expected, surprised but intrigued. You're paying for your fiancé to marry someone else? She asked. I replied with some flowery nonsense. Love is a river, not a reservoir. Sometimes you let it flow where it needs to. I'm just clearing the dam. I asked her to handle it procedurally. Send a liability assumption form to Jade and Damien, and include a $2,000 amendment fee upon receipt. The promise of a small fee and the appearance of procedure was too tempting. Cynthia agreed to present the document as a standard form. Next, I called vendors, caterer, florist, musicians, photographer, telling them the same tale and asking that final invoices and communications be directed to the new primary contacts, Jade and Damien. One vendor, the leader of the string quartet, even congratulated me on my profound emotional generosity. I almost felt something like guilt almost. I spent an hour composing a warm, heartfelt email to the guests with the subject line, an important update regarding our wedding. I wrote about the beauty of modern love and relationships that transform. I announced that, in the name of maturity, I had decided to step aside and allow the wedding to be a celebration of Jade and her soulmate Damien. I wished them happiness and said I would be taking our pre-planned honeymoon to Bali solo to celebrate my own journey. I signed it with my name and sent it to everyone on the guest list. Then I turned to our apartment. I packed a suitcase for Bali, had all of Jade's mail forwarded to her parents' address, and called a locksmith. I also boxed up all of Damien's belongings that had migrated into my home. The ukulele, the yoga mat, the unfinished canvases of urban transients, and left them neatly outside the apartment door with a note, "You forgot these." It was time for my personal growth journey. I spent the next 2 days in a hotel, watching the fallout from a safe distance. My phone began to blow up. First, friends confused by the email, "Is this a joke?" one asked. I replied briefly, "Nope, just mature." Then came more pointed questions from her friends. I ignored them. The real drama unfolded when Cynthia called Jade and Damien in for a final logistics meeting. As they were leaving, she handed them the standard form. "We just need your signatures to finalize the change of groom on the event order," she said with a professional smile. In their arrogant triumph, they signed the legally binding assumption of liability without a second thought, probably thinking it was just another seating chart. The moment Cynthia emailed me a copy of that signed document, the trap snapped shut. Vendor calls started that afternoon. I imagined the conversations. "Hi, Jade. This is Dave from Elegant Eats Catering, calling to confirm the final payment of $32,000. I pictured them looking at each other in panic. Damien, who probably considered a successful month to be one when his card didn't decline, was now legally on the hook for massive wedding expenses. That evening, I sat in the airport lounge when an unfamiliar number rang. I answered, feeling deeply satisfied. Damien's voice trembled. "What did you do?" he whispered. "The venue sent us a bill. We signed something." I sipped my pre-flight cocktail and replied, calm and cheery, "You should always read the fine print. It's part of the journey." He sobbed that he didn't have that kind of money. I said pleasantly that I'd handled things before. But then I had evolved. I'd become mature. "This is my wedding gift to you," I said. "Don't say I never gave you anything." I could hear Jade screaming in the background. "I've got a plane to catch," I told him. "Have a wonderful wedding," and hung up. Then I sent Jade a photo of my passport and boarding pass artfully arranged next to my cocktail with the caption, "Have a great wedding. You two can pay for it." I blocked her number, Damien's number, and her parents' numbers. I switched my phone to airplane mode and unplugged. I heard about the wedding from my best man, Mark, who'd gone to the venue out of morbid curiosity. He said it was a catastrophe of epic proportions. Jade and Damien had tried to salvage it, staging a massive screaming match with Cynthia in the winery lobby while waiving the contract. Cynthia, protected by paperwork, calmly pointed to their signatures. Jade's parents arrived. Her father attempted to write a check, but covered only a fraction of the balance. The vendors, learning the new couple weren't going to pay, packed up and left. The band, the florist, the caterer, all gone. About 30 guests had shown up, confused by the conflicting emails. They witnessed Jade in her wedding dress, sobbing in the parking lot while Damien argued with her father about money. Most guests left. A handful stayed for the spectacle. According to Mark, it was the saddest and most pathetic wedding anyone had ever seen. I spent 2 weeks in Bali, hiking, learning to surf, and drinking a lot of excellent, inexpensive beer. I didn't think about Jade once. When I returned, the apartment was quiet and peaceful. There was a stack of angry letters from her lawyer on the table. Arthur reviewed them and turned them into a firm cease and desist. He told me her case was frivolous, to the point of comical. I heard through a friend that Jade and Damien had split an unsurprising end to their melodrama. The venue and vendors, I understand, sued them both for unpaid balances. Jade's parents reportedly cut her off after she cost them a small fortune in non-refundable deposits and public humiliation. She had to move back home, a 30-something woman with debt and the reputation of the runaway bride who got stuck with the bill. Damien, I was told, left the state likely trying to avoid collectors. I poured myself a whiskey and enjoyed the silence.